Speaking of that liquidity gap, it's on the table for today. Every time we have one of these CPI, PPI pre-market mornings, we have the potential for this really great setup. I'm going to talk about the idea of a gap, but there is no candle gap, right? We're talking about liquidity. So you'll see candles there. I've had people that continue to reach out and say, what gap? I don't see a gap. I see candles. Yeah, there's candles. But we have to call it something. And liquidity gap is what it's referred to. So I'm scrolling back here looking for examples. History doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. And what we're looking for is a day where we had a pre-market economic data point come out and a lot of volatility. This isn't the greatest example because we got volatility in both directions, but this creates a liquidity vacuum and price will work its way back up and close that vacuum. If we were to keep going, say to December 13 or November 13, either one of those, here's the 20th. That must have been PPI right before a CPI. That'll work. All right, so this is where we left. Data point came out. We shot up really hard, really fast. This created a liquidity vacuum. It is the gap that I'm talking about. So, no candle there at all. Consider that a big gap. And the market spent the rest of the day coming back down and closing that gap. It actually overshot the gap a little bit, but it wasn't hard to tell where we were going. Now, this might be considered a one-off, like, oh yeah, man, you even knew what day it was. You've seen it before. Yep, I've seen it before. But that was December 12 CPI, and you could go to November 12 or November 13 CPI, and you'd find the same thing, a really big move, and then the market working its way all the way back to where that big move started. So it's not a one-off. It happens way more than you realize, especially if it's never been pointed out to you. But now it's been pointed out, so you can go hunting for it. There's always a fake out, right? There's those times where we're going to get this really big move and you think, oh, big move, liquidity gap. We're going to run back up there and close that gap. And it just keeps going farther away because the market doesn't always do something, right? The only promise of always is that it'll take your money if you lower your guard just a little bit. It's going to rob you. It's the only always that I know. But we're looking for an 8:30 data point that gives us a really big move in the market, preferably clean like that December one that I showed you. One direction, big move, and then it resets through the rest of the day trying to close that big move. So here was another one. This is the November CPI, PPI pre-market. So it got the data point, set a really sharp high, spent the rest of the day trying to get back to that data point. And when it finally got there, big dump. And then, of course, that created a liquidity vacuum. And we spent the rest of the afternoon working our way back up to that data point. Like a twofer. So this is on the table today. We don't get these all the time. I don't know that we're going to definitively get one today, but it's absolutely possible that we get one of these today and kind of expected. The first one that I tried to show that wasn't very good, that's what we don't want to see today. We don't want this to give us a really wide, big move to the upside, and then also a really big, wide move to the downside with these massive candles in each direction. That's not going to be helpful or useful, right? We want one direction. So it drops hard to the downside, 30, 40 points and spends the rest of the day climbing back up, or a big 30, 40 point spike to the upside and it spends the rest of the day fading back down. One or the other. I'm not picky. right? I'm not biased. I don't care which way we go. So really something to consider there. Also keep in mind, it doesn't have to come back. So it could, spike to the upside and just spend the rest of the day running to the upside.